Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and welcome back to my channel, Stubbornly Bookish. Today I'm coming to you with a very exciting video, and it's my Poppy War review. I've been intending to review this since November of 2018, which was when I first read The Poppy War. It was one of my favorite reads of 2018. It narrowly missed out on the top spot. I loved this book. My plans for this review is to be both spoiler-free and spoiler-filled, but I'll give you fair warning for the spoilery bits. So The Poppy War is actually heavily inspired by Chinese history. It is an adult high fantasy series that follows a girl named Rin, who is an orphan in the foster care system of her country, which is actually quite poor. She hates her life. The family she has to live with is awful, so she knows that her only chance to get out of it is to ace this test so she can get into the top school of her country so she can get out of her situation. Dragon Republic is my most anticipated release of 2019, and that's what really got me finally moving on doing this review, because I don't want to have read the Dragon Republic without reviewing the Poppy War. I would like to know what my thoughts are before I have the sequel in my hands. If you're planning on giving this book a read, there are some very big trigger warnings that you should look into. Off the top of my head, there is rape and really disgusting, gruesome murder, drug abuse and / drug glorification, and quite a few other gruesome things. So if you can, try and find a better list of triggers. It just popped into my head because I was talking about how dark this story can be. Just let you know, my mic is currently in the shop because I've been having a lot of issues with volume recently, and I'm trying to speak louder, but like, whatever, it's a temporary fix. I'm just going with it so you can actually hear my words. I thought the world and the magic in here were honestly really well done. There's so much culture in the world that helps really inform you on how Rin and her countrymen behave. There's class systems, poverty, drug trade, there's religion and a very huge lack of religion, plus reverence for this empress. There's so much that's packed in here that really makes you understand how most people function in this society, and I thought it was just really well done. I really liked the magic system in here as well, although it was a little difficult to understand in the beginning, but I also believe that was done on purpose. The main character definitely was struggling to wrap her mind around the type of magic that she could do, and she really painstakingly had to learn it and then relearn it, and I thought it was very well done and also unique. I'll discuss that more in like the spoiler filled section because I don't want to spoil things regarding the magic system specifically, but it was pretty cool. I will say that the surrounding areas of this world I think were slightly underdeveloped, especially one of the main antagonist forces. I wanted a little bit more from them and to understand why they were doing the things that they were doing. Sorry, I'm trying to remain vague. I do think that there's going to be a lot more discovered and developed throughout this trilogy though. The characters were some of my favorite parts of this novel, specifically our main character. Very rarely am I so attached to one main character whose story you're getting the full perspective from. Most of the time I end up loving a side character more, but Rin was an exception, and she was exceptional. Her arc, I think, in here was a thing of magnificence. You can really see how her earlier decisions feed into things that happen later, and how her experiences really form and shape the person that she is. And I just really love the fact that she was badass and ruthless and was power hungry. She's not particularly a likable character. She does incredibly flawed and terrible things, but I loved Rin, and I cannot wait to read more from her, and I'm also really scared with what's going to happen next for her. I thought a lot of the side characters too were huge standouts. I was just so impressed that side characters could get such an emotional pull out of me, even if it was really negative. I thought they were incredibly well written. They served the story really well. In terms of the plot, when I don't get into any spoilers, I also really enjoyed that aspect of this story. Frankly, the setup is great. The premise, great. A young orphan girl going off to a brutal school that's ready to cut her at any time. That's always something I'm going to be interested in reading. and I just can't believe everything that was packed into this book. And it's only like, I don't know, just over 500 pages. So much goes on in this story, yet I don't feel like we were really missing anything. Very, very little hope shines out of this book, and frankly, I don't think it's supposed to at all, but it's not an easy book by any means to read. I also really liked some of the themes that were brought into this fantasy world. It's a pretty big plot point that Rin is significantly darker skinned than her classmates, and she's treated really poorly because of that. And I also can acknowledge the shit ton of sexism that is in this story, and how she has to work so much harder, and how even other women are turned against her because of the terrible patriarchy. And just, I thought those themes being brought into the fantasy world were used well, and they weren't just used flippantly. Something that I found so enjoyable about this story was that I had no idea where it was going basically every single moment in time. Usually I'm pretty decent at picking up certain story beats or things that are going to occur, but things just went in crazy directions that I could never expect, and I was constantly blown away by certain twists, and just basically everything that happened at the end had my mouth just dropped to the floor, and I couldn't wait to pick up book 2, which I'm super excited to do very, very soon. And lastly, with the writing, I thought it was very well done. I thought the story was well written, nothing was really bogged down, and it wasn't very info dumpy or dry at any times, which I really appreciated, because high fantasy can be so dry. I also liked the way it was narrated by Rin and our audiobook narrator, but I liked Rin's perspective and her narration. She really cut through all the bullshit, and I guess that's just another character trait of Rin's that I admired, but I think it worked well, really, really well for this story. And frankly, I think her writing just shines when it comes to other aspects of the story, specifically the characters. I think the characters were crafted in such an expert way. You can really see how all of their past experiences form them in who they are today. I think that's about it for me when it comes to the spoiler-free section. I was pretty vague on some things that I really want to get into like the meat of in my spoiler-filled review. I've been dying to talk about this book for a long, long time, and I'm finally getting to do it, so I'm excited. So if you haven't read the book now and you plan to, see ya. Thank you for watching. And now I'm going to start talking all spoiler-filled. I'm going to do my best to keep this in chronological order, and if I can, I'm going to try and break this down into like Kid Rin, School Rin, Battle Rin, and like climax finale crazy shit going on. So from the very beginning, I was really, really hooked on this story, because early on you can really pick up on the fact that this isn't going to be an easy book to read. Rin is very abused, and like the way her foster parents, specifically her mother, treats her is like terrible. I like kind of immediately was like, oh, this book's not like fucking around. It's getting to it. And also while reading this for a second time, it was really, really interesting going back knowing the ending, because you can even see at the very beginning how Rin is treated by her family. She's downtrodden and thought to be of worthless. You can really see those small seeds and those experiences, how they start morphing her, making things even worse for her, and kind of twisting her into this really bloodthirsty, ruthless person. She is told by so many people, including in her school, that she has no value, and you can really see how that kind of ignites a flame in her, and how she refuses to be mistreated by her oppressors. And I also think like the setup of Rin being pretty downtrodden made Rin someone really easy to root for, and I'm wondering now if that was a specific choice by R.F.Kuang, because some of the things that Rin does later on is like super, super terrible. So I wonder if Kuang decided to make Rin a character to root for in the beginning because of that. It's just something that popped into my head. I loved her going to the school, and basically it wasn't what she initially expected it to be. She had to work so, so hard, and it was terrible, but it was also cool to see someone, the underdog essentially, rise up and do so well. And we get introduced to some really, really great characters in the school setting, Katai was an adorable little bean, and I loved him throughout this story. I love him. And one of my favorite characters also enters when Rin is in school, which is Neja. I love Neja, but obviously I do not love him when he enters and when we first meet him. He's a dick. He makes Rin's life miserable. He's a privileged little prick, and I love his evolution, and I'm dying to know if he's alive. I'm pretty sure he is. I'm like 99% sure that Neja is alive. Something that I'm getting off topic where I'm going to be bouncing all around. Sorry, I'm trying not to, but we are. I know later on we do discover that the way Neja heals after the big battle at the school, that like is not normal. So I'm really wondering what's his influence is going to be in the new story, and what his kind of supernatural-ish abilities that are hinted to by Alton. Speaking of Alton, I hate Alton. I hate Alton. I don't think you're supposed to like him, but I hate him. I basically hated him from start to finish. When he's at the school, he's kind of inoffensive and I don't really care, but I hate Alton. If I'm being honest, I would have loved to see more of the school, but I always love school settings in fantasy. What I was trying to talk about before when talking about the magic system was I loved the fact that it had to deal with gods, specifically gods that are indifferent / apathetic to like the human plight. It creates a really interesting dichotomy within our human characters who need the gods' help, but also know that this could be really bad. I just love it. And I also thought the fact that drugs were used in this story really smart, because it's always been weird to me that there isn't a lot of drug use in certain fantasy books. I guess it makes sense that a lot of YA doesn't have drug usage, but it makes sense to me that if you're in a fantasy world and things are going to shit, drugs are going to be used all the time. I liked the big battle at the school because it revealed a lot of things. It had the shift of Rin and Neja's relationship because they're fighting back to back, and it was like great. But then there's also Jiang, and his imminent like crazy powers are revealed and we don't know why yet, but I thought that was super interesting. Now I think I want to talk about the military stuff and with the fighting in the trenches and all that. I realized why I didn't like the military stuff, and that was because Alton is heavily featured in the military stuff, and I hate Alton. I can say this 500 times in a row and still want to continue saying that I hate Alton and his character, but I think his and Rin's relationship is incredibly toxic, and I think that is a huge influence on Rin currently, even though he's presumed to be dead. The expectations he puts on her, even at the very beginning of them sort of re-meeting and reacquainting, and her constant need for validation from him, I really hate it. And I'm worried the fact that now he's dead, it will affect Rin even more than if he was alive and surviving, because she feels the pressure of him and his legacy. Fight at the stuff at the port city, the military stuff, is where we get the most from like the Muganese people. I would have liked knowing a little bit more about them, and instead of them just being like faceless soldiers that were raised to be that way, so that's just how they behave. I would have liked a little bit more, I don't know, to learn about the surrounding countries and what made Mugen want to like invade Nikara so badly. And the reason why I don't think we are going to get too much more is because they're all dead now. The stuff that happened at the capital city, frankly, I don't even want to discuss. This was the part where I had to physically put down the book and give myself some time to read. I just thought it was so horrific, the stuff that happened, especially to her classmate whose name I'm forgetting. Their idea / plot to go into the mountain and free the gods / people who've been inhabited by gods is quite possibly the dumbest thing ever. Just like in retrospect, it was so dumb to think that that would work, and there's going to be a ton of repercussions. There were currently in the narrative story, but also I think there are going to be repercussions in the Dragon Republic, specifically with that guy that escaped. And the part where Rin and Alton are captured and they are again subject to all the tortures, and I know it's not too long, but it just like that is partially the reason why I think Alton is a more sympathetic character, even though I can't stand his ass. Like, the things he went through are traumatic, and that would warp basically anyone. So I do understand why he is the way he is, but I still don't really like him. And the climactic moment was unreal. I couldn't predict basically anything that went on in here, but I would have never predicted that genocide would be the climactic part. That was a lot. And it troubles me that Rin doesn't seem to notice how big her actions are. And while she was in a really terrible position and her choice was terrible either way, the fact that she refuses to acknowledge that she committed genocide and how terrible that was makes me nervous for Rin. I think this book is going to be incredibly dark and terrible for Rin, and I'm nervous. Scared where she's going to go from here. Her experiences have been so traumatic, and the pressures from Alton, I think, are going to do a really, really huge number on her and possibly push her into a very, very dark path. There was a couple things that I'm like wondering if they're going to be answered in the next book. I already asked some of those questions, but I really wonder if we're going to get more of Jiang from this story, if his influence and involvement is entirely done, if he's just going to be in the mountain, or if he is going to be in there. Maybe he kind of brings Rin away from the brink. I also wonder what the resolution with the Empress is going to be. I know I didn't really mention her in this, but like, the Empress sucks. She sucks ass. And I honestly can't wait to see Rin's vengeance against the Empress. I wonder if we're going to get more behind her other than she's just like maybe some being that is possessed by a god, or if there's other things going on with her. I'm thrilled to be basically done my review. I'm thrilled that I'm going to be reading The Dragon Republic so soon. I thought The Poppy War was great. It's a really, really good book. It's not an easy book, as I've mentioned a couple times, but it was clearly a 5 out of 5 star read for me. I loved the book. I almost said I loved the experience reading it, and frankly, sometimes I didn't. But it's a really, really good book. I think for a debut, it's phenomenal, and I cannot wait to see what else Kuang writes, and I can't wait to see how this series is finished, although I'm so terrified. If you've read The Poppy War, and I'm assuming you have if you stuck till the end of this video, I would love to discuss this book in the comments with you, and maybe soon The Dragon Republic. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. Thrilled to have finished this video finally, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.